Back in the day, there was a necromancer family that ruled supreme across the eastern continent, a bloodline so powerful that even kings feared to cross them, and all of that power traced back to a single man, Lyon von Marbas, the legendary founder who elevated House Marbas to the pinnacle of the continent. But after his death, his descendants gradually lost the power that made their family great. Each generation grew too weak to continue the necromancer legacy. But what nobody knew was that fate had other plans, and the day everyone believed the Marbas family was finished would become the day the strongest necromancer in its history was born. This is the story of a necromancer family's young heir. The story begins beneath the cold shadow of a guillotine. A young man stood silently before the execution blade, his dark hair swaying beneath the looming weapon of death. The atmosphere was heavy. Even the sky itself seemed to mourn as the razor-sharp blade hung above him, ready to fall at any moment. Yet strangely, the man showed no fear. Instead, he simply stared ahead with calm green eyes. Only one question echoed through his mind. How on earth did I end up here? Meanwhile, among the watching crowd, a young lady whispered in curiosity, "What did his lordship do to deserve such humiliation?" But the moment those words left her mouth, a man standing beside her immediately silenced her. He warned her that those in charge of the execution were ruthless bastards. The only thing commoners could do now was stay quiet and lay low, especially now war is raging across the continent. People like them had no choice but to remain as silent as dead mice. In the era of war and chaos, the strongest powers of bloodshed had taken control of the entire eastern continent. The opposing forces refused to surrender, and thus began a brutal conflict that swallowed everything in its path. And because of this endless war, the noble House of Marbas became one of its latest victims. Because in this world, the strong do as they please, while the weak are forced to struggle just to survive. And in the end, the weak must dance with death itself. Back at the execution grounds, the man in charge was Count Alan de Sylvester, Lord of House Sylvester and rival of House Marbas. With a cold, commanding voice, he gave the order, "Let the show commence." What he truly meant was simple. Cut the rope, execute the prisoner. But then something unexpected happened. The executioner couldn't move. His hands trembled violently as if an invisible weight was crushing his body, because the man he was ordered to kill was his own father. After a series of furious commands from Count Sylvester, the boy finally moved. He raised his blade and severed the rope. A chilling sound echoed through the air like a butcher's cleaver. Blood splattered across the boy's face. A dark, irreversible reality painted itself across him in crimson. This was the impossible duty forced upon him to kill Lyon von Marbas, the fallen patriarch of House Marbas. And the boy who carried out that execution was Lyon von Marbas, the son, the kinslayer, and the executioner of his own father. In this world, the title patriarch represented the head of a noble house, not only an aristocrat, but one of the core pillars of the nation itself. As the saying goes, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. Power is a burden only those strong enough can bear. Inside the council hall of House Marbas, Lyon von Marbas now sat as the new patriarch. The council reported the grim situation. House Sylvester was expanding its influence rapidly, and at this rate, they were on the verge of losing their remaining territory. One council member urgently spoke, "My Lord Patriarch, I insist you make a decision immediately." Others quickly supported him, pressuring the young lord. But Lyon simply responded with one word, "Enough." Then he calmly added, "I ask that you remain patient a little longer. I need more time before making a decision." And with that, he stood up and left the council hall. Lyon von Marbas had become patriarch at just 14 years old after his father's death. Once, House Marbas was feared as a powerful necromancer clan, but that glory had long since faded into history. Now the once great family stood on the verge of collapse. As Lyon walked through the palace corridors, he stopped before a large portrait of his late parents. His heart was heavy with grief as he searched for guidance. But reality was cruel. The dead cannot offer wisdom. Walking further, he stopped before another portrait, the founding patriarch of House Marbas, Lyon von Marbas. and the only true necromancer the continent had ever known. It was because of this man that House Marbas first rose to power. On countless battlefields, Wellin earned a terrifying reputation. Yet ever since the founding patriarch's era, no member of the family had succeeded in becoming a full-fledged necromancer. And with each passing generation, House Marbas continued its slow decline. A decline so severe that Lyon himself had been forced to execute his own father. Pushing open a massive door, Lyon entered a secluded chamber. At the center of the room rested an ancient book upon a table, the Chronicles of the Marbas lineage. As Lyon read through the records, he found himself captivated by the stories of Lyon von Marbas, a figure so legendary he was almost considered mythical. With a single wave of his hand, entire armies would be swept away like leaves caught in a storm. He commanded endless hordes of undead, crushing all opposition in his path. The eastern continent itself was conquered in just 2 months beneath his banner. According to legend, Wellin formed a pact with a devil named Marbas and unlocked the forbidden art of necromancy. Using the dreadful tome known as the Necronomicon, he gained the power necessary to rule the continent. And sitting upon the table before Lyon was the very same book, the Necronomicon. The moment he opened it, a deep voice echoed throughout the room. "Heed me, young patriarch." Lyon froze instantly. He spun toward the source of the voice. Then it spoke again. "Do not be afraid, my child. I am no threat to you or your kin." Lyon remained calm, but he wasn't foolish enough to trust a mysterious voice. He immediately demanded that it reveal itself. Suddenly, a glowing summoning circle appeared behind him. The room trembled as mana surged through the air, and when Lyon turned around, a gigantic crimson lion stood before him. The beast seemed surprised that Lyon didn't recognize it. After all, it was a mystical being, a creature far beyond ordinary understanding. The moment it mentioned his predecessor, Lyon understood. It was speaking about his father, Lyon von Marbas. The beast immediately sensed it. The mana bond connecting it to the former patriarch had been severed. Lyon von Marbas had been far too kind for the dark legacy of House Marbas. Yet despite its anger toward him, the beast had one question. Who had killed its contractor? Who delivered the final blow? Without hesitation, Lyon answered. If the beast referred to the one who killed his father, then it was him, Lyon von Marbas, his own son. The atmosphere shifted instantly. A violent wind erupted through the chamber. The crimson lion's eyes burned with fury. The beast locked onto Lyon and asked one final time, "Are you the one who slew my oath-bound contractor?" But Lyon showed no fear. Meeting the beast's gaze coldly, he replied, "I am the one who murdered my own father." Immediately those words left Lyon's mouth. The beast flew into a rage. Its eyes blazed brighter than a crimson sun as an overwhelming pressure filled the room. Using its demonic power, the beast peered directly into Lyon's memories. It saw Lyon's trembling hand stained in blood. It saw Lyon von Marbas lose his head. And most importantly, it saw the look of absolute horror on Lyon's face after carrying out the execution. After witnessing everything, the beast arrived at a conclusion. Lyon may have cut the rope with his own hands, but that did not make him his father's killer. However, Lyon refused to accept those words. He still insisted that he was responsible for his father's death. The beast narrowed its eyes and examined him more carefully. Through its spiritual vision, it sensed something unusual lurking within the boy. A vast abyss of darkness, a frightening reserve of magical power, hidden beneath the surface. How can a mere child possess such overwhelming potential? After observing him closely, the beast reached a startling conclusion. This boy might one day surpass even his legendary ancestor. Ahem. The beast cleared its throat before formally introducing itself. I am Marbas, one of the 72 demons of hell. The demon who abandoned the infernal realm and chose to walk beside humanity. A lifelong companion of Lyon von Marbas and the source of the necromancy that became House Marbas. Although Marbas was now bound to the Necronomicon, he had once been a terrifying demon whose name was feared across the world. Lyon was already familiar with the stories. The founder of House Marbas had often spoken of the legendary black lion known as Marbas. Yet one question had always troubled him. With his glowing green eyes fixed on the demon, Lyon finally asked, "Then tell me, why did you abandon us?" Marbas frowned. "Abandon you?" Confused by the accusation, the demon demanded an explanation. Lyon didn't hesitate. Ever since the era of Lyon von Marbas, no member of the family had ever managed to reach the same heights. To Lyon, that could only mean one thing. They had been forsaken. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Marbas finally spoke. "The reason your family cannot wield the true power of necromancy has nothing to do with me. The problem is that none of you were worthy vessels." The demon continued without mercy. Not a single descendant had possessed even a fraction of Lyon's talent. Their decline was not the fault of Marbas. It was simply the gradual weakening of their bloodline. Hearing those words, Lyon finally understood the truth. With a solemn expression, he bowed his head slightly. "In that case, Lord Marbas, I have a favor to ask." The moment the word favor left his mouth, Marbas exploded in anger. "Never! A favor is an act where only one side benefits. When dealing with a demon, it is called a pact or a deal." Lyon immediately corrected himself. "Very well, then let us form a pact. Grant me the power of necromancy." For a brief moment, Marbas was genuinely surprised. Then he asked a simple question. "And what makes you believe you are worthy of such power?" Lyon met the demon's gaze without hesitation. "Because I have the talent for it." He calmly explained his reasoning. If he was truly talentless, he wouldn't even be able to stand before a demon and hold a conversation. According to ancient records, ordinary humans who faced demons would lose their sanity, suffer terrifying hallucinations, and eventually die once their mana was drained away. Yet Lyon remained perfectly conscious. That alone proved he possessed extraordinary potential. Marbas observed him silently. Truthfully, he had already sensed Lyon's talent from the very beginning. This was merely a test of the boy's resolve. Finally, the demon nodded. "As I said before, any request made to a demon." Before Marbas could finish speaking, Lyon interrupted. "Must be treated as a pact. I remember your words well, and I would be a fool to believe I could receive such power without offering something in return." For the first time, Marbas burst into laughter. "Excellent. Then let us forge a pact, young lord of the necromancer bloodline." Lyon straightened his posture. He was prepared to hear the price. Suddenly, the demon's expression turned ice cold. Its eyes narrowed as it revealed its demand. "Every facet of your being." The room fell silent, but instead of fear, Lyon felt relieved. Without the slightest hesitation, he accepted, gladly offering every part of his insignificant existence in exchange for the power to change his fate. Meanwhile, back at the council hall of House Marbas, all of the council members had gathered in Lyon's absence. "Ahem." One of the elders cleared his throat before addressing the room. "You are all aware that our current patriarch, Lord Lyon, possesses little authority or experience to make decisions that will determine the fate of our entire house. Are we all in agreement?" The hall fell silent. No one dared challenge the speaker. After all, he was Lyon's uncle and closest surviving relative. Seeing no opposition, the man continued. "For the foreseeable future, I intend to take charge of all matters concerning House Marbas. Does anyone object?" Of course. What he truly meant was simple. He intended to seize control of the family and strip Lyon of his authority. Finally, another council member spoke in support of the proposal. "Lord Lyon is still a child who has not even come of age. We cannot entrust the survival of our house to an inexperienced boy. Therefore, Sir Kirkle should oversee the family's affairs until further notice." Another elder immediately rose in protest. "Lord Lyon is the direct descendant of the previous patriarch. Never in the history of House Marbas has a successor been appointed in violation of the bloodline." The atmosphere instantly grew tense. What good are traditions if our entire lineage is about to be wiped out? The armies of House Sylvester are already marching toward our territory. If you wish to die alongside the clueless young lord, then do so. As for me, I intend to survive." Those words pushed the one and only remaining loyalist to his limit. Rising from his seat, he slammed his hand against the table. Every one of us was granted a place in this council by the grace of the late patriarch. We owe this house our loyalty. Instead of fighting amongst ourselves like scavengers, we should be preparing to defend House Marbas to the very end. This man is Sir Pullen, one of the last loyal vassals of House Marbas, and the only person bold enough to openly oppose Lyon's uncle. Unfortunately, standing against Kirkle was like standing before a monster. Sir Kirkle slowly rose from his chair. I see our young patriarch still has one loyal supporter. His voice remained calm, but the danger behind it was unmistakable. Unfortunately, loyalty without wisdom is meaningless. This matter has already been decided. Slowly, Kirkle walked towards Sir Pullen and placed a hand on his shoulder. Instantly, Pullen froze. A strange black flame erupted from Kirkle's palm. The magical fire burned without heat, yet its terrifying aura alone was enough to silence the room. I care little for your opinion. Kirkle's smile widened. But for the sake of your family, choose your next words very carefully. Do not stand in the way of our survival, my friend. Instead, allow wisdom to take its course. Meanwhile, within the spiritual realm, Lyon had successfully formed a pact with Marbas. Everything seemed perfect, except for one small problem. Because of the new contract, the true extent of Marbas' power had become heavily restricted. Although Lyon's late father lacked the ambition Marbas desired, he possessed far greater mana reserves than Lyon currently had. Marbas relied on his contractor's mana to sustain his own existence. Curious, Lyon asked what they would do about the issue. We must be extremely careful with your mana for now. The moment those words left his mouth, Marbas snapped his claws. A massive crimson fireball exploded into existence. Seconds later, the giant demonic lion had completely transformed. Standing before Lyon now was an adorable black puppy, a far less demanding form to maintain. Without another word, Marbas turned toward the exit. Let us depart. Lyon blinked in confusion. He didn't expect that they would be going anywhere. Marbas glanced over his shoulder. Do you truly desire power capable of rivaling even your legendary ancestor? I do. Lyon answered without hesitation. Then tell me, if you wish to follow in Lyon von Marbas' footsteps, what better way is there than retracing those very steps yourself? Lyon considered the idea briefly before nodding. Good, Marbas continued. Then we shall journey to the hidden shrine of your progenitor. Be warned, the trials ahead may very well cost you your life. Are you prepared for that? Lyon showed no fear whatsoever. He had already made his decision. Seeing this, Marbas began walking. I shall lead the way. If you believe yourself worthy, then follow me, young contractor. After you. Without hesitation, Lyon followed behind. Before long, they arrived at the mistwoods of House Marbas. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Marbas explained that these woods formed an ever-changing labyrinth. Only those carrying the blood of a true patriarch could navigate its paths. Lyon nodded. I remember my father mentioning that only the rightful patriarch may enter the hidden shrine. After a brief pause, he frowned. But if this place was meant to grant necromantic power to our ancestors, then why? Before he could finish, Marbas interrupted. Because none of them ever passed the trial. They all lacked the most fundamental requirement. Marbas continued. Only those who possess the purest shade of black, the element of the abyss itself, can open the path leading to the shrine. Soon, they arrived at the entrance where the trial would begin. As they stepped inside, Marbas issued one final warning. From this point forward, you will receive no assistance from me. Strangely enough, Lyon looked excited rather than afraid. Seeing this, Marbas gave his final piece of advice. Follow the instructions of the Necronomicon at all times. With that, the two advanced toward the path that promised the power of necromancy. Eventually, they entered a vast chamber. Inside stood a group of armed goblins surrounding a beautiful young woman they had taken captive. Immediately, Lyon opened the Necronomicon and searched for guidance. The first instruction appeared. You must begin by taking the life of a living being. Lyon understood instantly. Without hesitation, he closed the book and drew his sword. His glowing green eyes locked onto his target. Suddenly, a massive goblin charged toward him. The creature swung its fang-like blade with tremendous force, but Lyon effortlessly stepped aside. In a single motion, he raised his sword. Slash! The blade sliced cleanly across the goblin's throat. Thud! The giant creature crashed lifelessly to the ground. Lyon calmly lowered his weapon and stared at the fallen corpse. That makes one. The remaining goblins bared their fangs and surrounded Lyon, their eyes burning with rage over the death of their fallen companion. Yet Lyon's mind was elsewhere. A memory from his childhood resurfaced. Back when he was young, his father had made him make a promise. No matter who stands before you on the battlefield, if their life rests in your hands, swear that you will grant them the most peaceful end possible. Those words still echoed within Lyon's heart. That was why he aimed for the cervical vertebra with every strike. The quickest kill, the least painful death. Meanwhile, Marbas watched silently from the shadows. Although Lyon clearly lacked formal swordsmanship training, every attack landed with astonishing precision. His strike targeted vital points with almost unnatural accuracy. Was that merely luck, or an innate gift? Marbas muttered curiously as he continued observing. Meanwhile, Lyon prepared for the next exchange. The chamber was growing darker. He noticed one of the torches had gone out the moment the first goblin died. If the darkness continued spreading, his vision would gradually worsen. He needed to adapt before that happened. Lyon shifted his strategy, abandoning broad attacks and focusing entirely on precise thrusts and deadly punctures. His blade pierced cleanly through another goblin. The creature collapsed. At the same moment, another torch flickered out. The remaining goblins roared and charged together. Their weapons swung toward him simultaneously. Lyon calmly stepped aside. The goblins' blades crashed into each other. Without missing the opportunity, Lyon's sword flashed through the darkness and severed one of their necks. Another body hit the floor. Another torch died. But by now, Lyon's eyes had begun adjusting to the darkness. Ironically, he could see better than before. Unfortunately, his weapon was not faring nearly as well. The repeated clashes had damaged the blade considerably. Suddenly, the final goblin lunged from his blind spot. Too late to react, the only thing Lyon could do was hurl his sword. The blade flew past the creature, grazing only its cheek. Immediately, Lyon dove forward after the sword. The moment his hand wrapped around the weapon's hilt again, he launched himself at the goblin. Thrust, the blade pierced straight through its chest. Then, with a brutal twist, he tore the weapon free. Thud! The final goblin collapsed lifelessly. Silence filled the chamber. Lyon slowly turned toward the beautiful young woman they had been holding captive. Step, step, step. He approached her calmly and removed the cloth gag from her mouth. The woman immediately sighed in relief. Thank you. You saved my... Before she could finish speaking, Lyon's sword drove straight into her chest. Her eyes widened in absolute disbelief. Yet Lyon's expression remained completely unchanged. Slowly, he pulled the blade free. At that moment, Lyon recalled another lesson from his father. During his travels across the continent, he had encountered monsters capable of perfectly imitating human beings, creatures that preyed upon trust. Lyon plunged the sword into the woman's body once more. A painful scream echoed throughout the chamber. My father also taught me something else. Lyon's voice was calm, cold, unwavering. Those who deceive others and exploit their trust deserve no peaceful end. A faint smile appeared on his face, a smile that sent chills through the darkness itself. I think you could use a lesson in suffering. And at that exact moment, the final torch went out. Darkness swallowed the chamber whole. Meanwhile, inside a lavish banquet hall, a grand celebration was underway. The event had been organized by none other than Sir Kirkle, Lyon's uncle. With two beautiful women wrapped around his arms, the man laughed proudly. It won't be long now before this cursed house finally falls into my hands. The women eagerly fed his ego. A distinguished gentleman like Sir Kirkle is far better suited to lead the household than some baby-faced child. Indeed, using House Sylvester to secure your position was a brilliant move. Only a true leader could pull off something like that. Flattered by their praise, Kirkle raised his wine glass. Ha! We may have to bow our heads to those Sylvester scum for a while, but that's a small price to pay. He took a leisurely sip before continuing. It's certainly preferable to letting that whelp lion drag House Marbas into extinction. Who could deny it? I played this game perfectly, and I won. The conspirators around him nodded in agreement. However, one of the council members suddenly raised a concern. What do you intend to do about Lyon, Sir Kirkle? The people of the estate were deeply loyal to his father. The boy may prove harder to remove than you expect. Kirkle casually grabbed another bottle of wine. There is no need to complicate matters. His smile darkened. Once the boy is dead, everything can be justified afterward. After all, dead men tell no tales, and neither do their sons. The conspirator chuckled. The last time the dead spoke was centuries ago, when the founding patriarch still wielded the power of necromancy. The entire hall erupted with laughter. Then they raised their glasses together. A toast to our next and rightful patriarch. Cheers. Glasses clinked. Wine flowed, and the celebration continued. Yet there is an old saying, out of hatred for the cockroaches, the ants voted for the insecticide. But when the poison arrived, it killed both the roaches and the ants alike. Meanwhile, inside the council chamber of House Sylvester, a very different conversation was taking place. The Lord of House Sylvester sat confidently upon his seat. I trust our plans to subjugate House Marbas are proceeding smoothly? Of course, my lord. One of his subordinates bowed respectfully. Lyon von Marbas has already become little more than a pawn in our hands. We only await official authorization from the imperial household before commencing full-scale war. A cruel smile spread across the lord's face. Those fools truly believe I would postpone a second campaign simply because the first one ended recently. With a casual motion, he knocked a chess piece off the board. I must admit, I created a rather convenient opening. His eyes drifted toward a portrait resting nearby. What was this fool's name again? Kirkle. To think that the legendary House Marbas will meet its end because of a short-sighted traitor. What a delightful night this shall be. Hasten the preparations immediately. Do you understand? Yes, my lord. The lord's smile widened. First the father, now the son. I can scarcely wait to hear your screams. Back inside the shrine trial, Lyon stood amidst the darkness. Every torch had been extinguished. The chamber had become pitch black. Was that the last one? Lyon muttered quietly. Suddenly, light flooded the room. The torches reignited brighter than before. Marbas immediately began questioning him. What made you suspect that the beauty was a monster working with the others? Lyon answered without hesitation. It was simple. When all the other torches went out, one remained lit. He explained further. When we first entered this chamber, I noticed something unusual. The flames burned green, a color commonly associated with the dead. And sure enough, each time I killed a monster, one torch extinguished itself. But after eliminating every goblin, one torch was still burning. That meant one monster remained alive, and until it died, I could not proceed. Marbas fell silent. The more he listened, the more disturbed he became. How terrifyingly cold-blooded. Most adults would have struggled to think clearly in a life-or-death situation. Yet this 14-year-old boy had calmly analyzed every detail, adapted his strategy, and eliminated every threat without hesitation. Not only that, he even uncovered the hidden monster entirely on his own. Could it be that Lyon possessed something far more extraordinary than anyone realized? A wicked grin slowly spread across Marbas' face. How entertaining. I truly cannot wait to see what you show me next. After a moment, the demon finally spoke. Now then, with Welland's first trial complete, let us proceed to the second. The Necronomicon suddenly flipped open on its own. The first instruction faded away. A new sentence appeared across the ancient pages. Second, you must raise the fallen. Hearing this, Lyon stared at the lifeless bodies scattered across the chamber floor. A smile appeared on his face. A smile filled not with relief, but anticipation. Marbas began teaching Lyon the fundamentals of necromancy. Focus your gaze upon the goblins you have slain. Lyon did exactly as instructed. Now direct your mana to your eyes and sharpen your vision. As Lyon followed the instructions, his vision gradually changed. Suddenly, he could see thin threads extending from each corpse. stretching toward an unknown destination beyond the realm of the living. In the language of necromancers, those threads are known as death lines. The demon continued his lesson, carefully guiding Lyon through the process of manipulating the connection between life and death. Eventually, Lyon raised a question that had been troubling him. My predecessor once told me that raising a human as undead is far more difficult than raising a monster. His eyes narrowed. Have I reached a level where I can raise a human corpse? Marbas immediately sensed there was someone specific Lyon had in mind. The demon smirked. Oh, and who might this unfortunate soul be? Lyon answered without the slightest hesitation. Lyon von Marbas. A cold smile formed on his face. My one and only uncle. Meanwhile, back at the banquet hall, the celebration was still in full swing. Lyon and his conspirators continued drinking and boasting about their impending victory. Then suddenly, rumble! A violent tremor shook the entire building. The impact was so powerful that the grand chandelier hanging above snapped from its chains and crashed onto the banquet table. Wine glasses shattered. Guests stumbled. The entire hall erupted into confusion. Lion's eyes narrowed toward the shadows near the entrance. Who's there? A figure stood silently behind the curtains. When Lyon recognized the person, he let out a relieved laugh. Well, look who decided to visit. The young patriarch of our declining house. Surprisingly, those words didn't anger Lyon. If anything, he found them amusing. For once, his uncle had acknowledged him as the true patriarch. I must say, nephew, this is quite a late-night visit. Care to explain yourself? Lyon's expression remained unchanged. The lord of an estate requires no justification to visit one of his subjects. Or must I now seek permission before entering my own territory? Lion's smile vanished. I suppose any other worthy lord would need such courtesies. But you and I both know you're far from worthy. Tell me, boy, are you afraid someone might steal your seat? It's far too late for that. Your pathetic father is no longer here to protect you. For a brief moment, silence filled the hall. Then Lyon slowly pulled the curtain aside and stepped into the light. No, his voice was calm. I've simply realized that the only person capable of protecting me is myself. Lyon laughed. Very bold of you to come here alone. Lion's eyes gleamed like frozen emeralds. Uncle, the real boldness lies in assuming I came alone. The moment those words left his mouth, the ground beneath Lion's feet exploded with dark mana. Black energy surged through the floor like a living tide. Lion's face immediately darkened. He could already sense something was terribly wrong. Then slowly, the undead rose from beneath the ground, their hollow eyes glittering with a sinister radiance. The undead. Lion's voice trembled. How is this possible? Not even my brother possessed such power. Lyon stared down at him coldly. Why surprised? House Marbas was once and would always be a family of necromancers. Lyon gritted his teeth. Guards, destroy those abominations at once. Yes, sir. The guards immediately charged forward. But before their blades could reach Lyon, an undead warrior intercepted the strike. With a single swing, the guard's weapon was set flying across the room. The guard barely had time to react. The undead's blade flashed. A horrifying scream echoed through the hall. The guard's body split apart before collapsing lifelessly onto the floor. The remaining guards froze. Their confidence vanished instantly. Yet the nightmare had only begun. The undead surged forward like a tidal wave. Limbs flew through the air. Blood splattered across the banquet hall. Screams replaced laughter. What had begun as a celebration had transformed into a massacre. And all Lyon could do was watch in horror. Lyon stood frozen in disbelief. This is impossible. If my eyes are not deceiving me, then this boy is truly wielding the art of necromancy. Fury twisted his expression. Dark mana gathered in his palm, swirling violently until it condensed into a sphere of black flames. What have you done? He roared. How dare you make a mockery of the founding patriarch's sacred power? Is it truly so strange for the patriarch of House Marbas to command the dead? Necromancy is a lost art, a relic buried in the annals of history. Not even your father could wield such power. His voice rose with every word. And yet you expect me to believe that a worthless brat like you has succeeded where generations have failed. I refuse to entertain such nonsense. Lyon simply smiled. If you refuse to believe it, he slowly raised a finger. Then allow me to demonstrate. At his command, the undead charged. Kirkle immediately hurled his sphere of black flames. Back to the abyss with you. Boom. The explosion engulfed the undead. Their flesh peeled away. Bones shattered. For a brief moment, Kirkle allowed himself a smile. Then, crack, 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 broken bones reassembled. Torn flesh regenerated. The undead rose once more as if nothing had happened. Kirkle's smile vanished. The creatures lunged again. For the first time, fear appeared in his eyes. He unleashed wave after wave of dark magic. Explosions shook the hall. Flames engulfed the room. Yet the undead never slowed. They simply kept advancing. Relentless. Unstoppable. Death itself had become Lyon's soldier. Only then did Kirkle realize the truth. He was doomed. Yet even now, his pride refused to break. You ungrateful wretch. You'll pay dearly for this betrayal. Before he could continue, Lyon interrupted him. His voice was calm, almost bored. I once read a history book with my father. There are only two sides in history, the victors and the vanquished, and time is what separates the two. Kirkle wanted nothing more than to silence him, but Lyon kept speaking. There is one lesson I learned from that book. Forgiveness is a privilege reserved for the victor. The words struck harder than any blade. You were a victor once, uncle, when you betrayed my father, when you sold your family for your own survival. But times have changed. Kirkle trembled with rage. Shut your mouth. Lyon ignored him. Slowly, he raised his hand. Lyon von Marbas, I shall forever remember this day. As the day of your defeat, his hand moved forward. The undead obeyed instantly. Swish! A blade flashed through the air. A blood-curdling scream echoed across the hall. Kirkle's body collapsed to the floor. His final expression was one of absolute disbelief. Lyon stared down at him without emotion. Silence followed. Even Marbas was momentarily speechless. The demon stared at Lyon in disbelief. Meanwhile, Lyon simply stood there, and a faint smile appeared on his face. A dangerous smile. The kind of smile that meant he had just thought of something far more entertaining. Marbas immediately felt uneasy. Somehow, that smile was more terrifying than the massacre itself. Meanwhile, back at the council hall of House Marbas, the council members had gathered once again. Another council meeting already? Did Sir Kirkle summon us here? I haven't the slightest idea. Whatever the reason, an emergency meeting is no small matter. The conspirators exchanged ideas. No one knows why they were summoned. Some assumed it concerned the coming war with House Sylvester. Others expected Kirkle to formally announce his rise to power. Then, the chamber doors opened. Everyone turned toward the entrance. A figure entered, but it was not the man they expected. Lyon walked in alone, without saying a word. He crossed the room and calmly walked to his seat. Immediately, whispers spread throughout the hall. What is the meaning of this? I thought Sir Kirkle called this meeting. Why is Lord Lyon here? Lyon was hearing, having listened to everything. He finally spoke. Were you expecting to see my uncle in my study? Unfortunately, he will not be joining us today. One council member cautiously spoke. My lord, what exactly do you mean by that? He is dead. Lyon leaned to his chair and dropped those words as if they meant nothing at all. The words landed like a thunderbolt. The entire chamber erupted. Dead? Yes. In fact, by my hands. His emerald eyes swept across the stunned council. If that answers your question, does anyone else have something they wish to say? The council members sat frozen in shock. Lyon's words weighed heavily upon the chamber. Bang! One of the elders slammed his hand against the table. If what you've said is true, my lord, then I demand an explanation. His voice trembled with disbelief. How can you claim to have killed the most senior elder of House Marbas when we have scarcely finished mourning the death of your father? The chamber erupted into chaos. Questions flew from every direction. Yet throughout it all, Lyon remained silent. He simply listened. Only when the noise finally died down did he speak. Lyon von Marbas was a traitor. The room instantly fell silent. Eyes widened. Faces paled. Lyon's emerald eyes swept across the council. Not only did he betray my father, he leaked vital information to House Sylvester. He conspired against our clan, and he sought to steal the position that rightfully belongs to me. The atmosphere grew heavier with every word. What I find most curious, however, despite overwhelming justification for his execution, you continue to speak of him with remarkable loyalty. At that moment, many of them finally accepted the truth. Kirkle was dead, and somehow, their own lives might even be in danger. One council member stammered, "My goodness, I had no idea such treachery was taking place." Another quickly followed, "Curse that old fool. We are innocent, my lord. How could we possibly have known what he was planning?" Silence. The single word struck the chamber harder than a hammer. "Perhaps your claims are true, but ignorance does not absolve guilt. You stand accused of a different crime." His voice grew colder. "Negligence. Your duty was to uncover threats to this house. You failed." The elders realized they had walked directly into his trap, yet they continued desperately searching for a way out. Finally, one of them spoke. "My lord, if all this is true, do you possess evidence? It would be a tragedy if an innocent man were slain unjustly." For a moment, Lyon appeared thoughtful. Then he slowly rose from his seat. The movement alone silenced the room. "You speak as though you know more than I do." The council members stiffened. Lyon glanced briefly at Marbas, who rested quietly upon his shoulder. "Very well, you desire proof." He extended his hand. "Allow me to demonstrate the betrayal of Lyon von Marbas." Dark mana exploded through the chamber. The room trembled. Council members stumbled backward in terror. "The true-born son of House Marbas, I, Lyon von Marbas, call forth the damned souls wandering this realm." Black energy swirled across the floor. Then, the dead began to rise. The council members watched in horror. Some recognized the spell immediately, the lost art of House Marbas. But before they could process what was happening, a familiar figure emerged from the darkness. Lyon von Marbas. The entire chamber froze. The impossible stood before them. Only then did they understand. The forgotten power of House Marbas had truly returned. Lyon spoke once more. "Lyon von Marbas, confess your crimes before this council, with whatever remains of your shattered mind." The councilors froze in horror. "Everyone, run for your lives," one councilor screamed. But Lyon had no intention of letting anyone leave. Before the fleeing men could even take a single step, a severed head flew through the air. Thud, the body collapsed lifelessly onto the floor. Another counselor cried out in agony as his legs was cleaved clean off. He desperately crawled across the blood-soaked floor, pleading for mercy. Lyon's emerald eyes remained as cold as ice. "This meeting is not over yet." His voice echoed through the chamber. "You will give your full attention to your patriarch until he has nothing left to say." Turning his gaze toward the undead Kirkle, Lyon spoke again. "Tell me, Kirkle, was there a single person present here who knew nothing of your treachery?" The undead traitor slowly opened his mouth. "Everyone who served the former patriarch betrayed him, down to the very last man. No one here was ignorant of my schemes." "I see. Then that settles the matter." The remaining conspirators immediately fell to their knees. "Please forgive us, my lord. We confess our crimes. Give us a chance to prove our loyalty." Their desperate cries filled the hall. But Lyon paid their pleas no heed. The execution commenced, and one by one the conspirators fell until not a single traitor remained standing within the council chamber. As silence descended upon the hall, Lyon slowly raised his hand and gazed upon the blood-stained assembly. "By the authority vested in me, I, Lyon von Marbas, patriarch of House Marbas, hereby proclaim before this council that the ancient art of necromancy has returned to House Marbas." And with that declaration, a new era for House Marbas began. And that concludes today's story. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.